Today we're going to check out an interesting looking keyboard from Velocifire because I really wanted to get a look at this unique keyboard enclosure which was apparently designed by Cherry engineers. The box is very plain, but it shows that it's the Velocifire T11. Opening it up, we have a keyboard guide which is in English, so that's nice. We also get a plastic ring keycap puller and then the keyboard itself in a foam sleeve. And here's the keyboard, and as we can see, it's quite a different looking keyboard to anything on the market. The obvious thing is the huge clear plastic enclosure. Now this is something that will divide many people and is something that probably many won't like. Personally, at first I wasn't a fan since it's quite large and in your face. The clear plastic does add a lot to the rear and to the front of the unit, especially at the front where it protrudes quite far but not far enough to be some sort of wrist rest. So therefore it would just make this whole front flap just an aesthetic feature rather than anything functional. However, I do really like the bottom of the keyboard and the idea of completely showing the internals, and I think it adds a really cool design element. But we can see what they went out to do. It looks like they wanted to kind of make the keyboard look like it was floating, and to be fair it actually does, and since there's no top shell it has a floating key design as well, so the switches are exposed. I also really like the simplistic rectangular shape it has at the bottom, and when we plug it in it turns on 5 surface mounted LEDs, which gives it an underglow effect which I also really like, and this has been a bit of a trend with custom keyboards. Although since this has a completely clear transparent plastic rather than frosted, the light isn't diffused much, but from the sides and from up top the underglow actually looks pretty good, but it's only in blue so it may not match what you like. And with it plugged in we can see this mess of LEDs, which is unfortunate. While it may look RGB at first glance on a website, these do have fixed color LEDs, so they can't change color, so each row has a dedicated color, also known as a fixed rainbow pattern. And since I'm not a fan of this, I just used it with the LEDs off since it does make it look way better. And it does come off as a bit tacky and cheap looking, although some may like this kind of colour scheme, but I know many would prefer probably a singular colour scheme like white or blue, and that would be more flexible with tastes and matching setups. Because of the design, they've opted to have the cable come out of the side, which isn't detachable. It's a bit troublesome if your USB port is towards the left or something, but I think the main negative is that for 99% of people we have to use the mouse right next to it. So what it actually does is make the keyboard even bigger. I wish they would have just had a little hole at the back for the cable to go through or something. And that pretty much sums up what I think about the clear plastic element. I think without the large flanges on the front and the rear of the keyboard, it would be a really interesting but nice and clean looking keyboard. Kinda similar to how the Magic Force Crystal looks, but more open at the bottom. On top is a really simple and sleek aluminium plate which looks and feels great. The edge is chamfered to reveal a more chromatic look, but also to take the edge off, of course. The logo is a bit much, and the typeface or font on the keycaps, it isn't bad, but due to the double shot nature of them, they have these bridging gaps that make it a bit messy looking. The combination of the white keycaps, the silver aluminium plate and the clear plastic bottom works well together to make a light, clean feeling keyboard, and it has a nice color palette. On the bottom there's a couple of rubber feet, but there's no flip up feet, so it has a fixed elevation. The natural inclination is at about 7-ish degrees, so it's pretty flat. I know that flip up feet would kind of mess up the look that they were going for, but it's still a missing feature that many use. But enough of that, this is a full-sized keyboard with 104 keys. I think a 10 keyless version would have been cool to see and make it nicer looking as well. Taking off the keycaps, and we can see these are ABS double shot keycaps, meaning that the character is a different piece of plastic to the rest of the keycap, so it will never fade away. And due to the double shot nature, the keycap is reasonably thick at about 1.5 mils. The key switches used are Zorro Brown switches, but this is also available in blues. I've covered these before in their other keyboards, so I really should have requested some blues. But yeah, they're not the best switches out there. They're Cherry MX clones, so they look the same and are compatible with all those keycaps. Since they're brown, they're quite light and have a small tactile bump halfway, and what can I say, they just don't feel as nice as even Cherry MX Browns. They feel kinda cheap and kind of hollow and spongy. There are consistency issues in terms of actuation force required, with some being lighter than others, but you won't really notice this when typing. And they still do have the 4mm travel and tactile bump, and they still give that mechanical experience, albeit not as nice. There are a couple of lighting options, which is all controlled by the function key. The up and down arrow keys control brightness, and the left and right control the speed with certain patterns. Insert is a snake mode. Home is the ripple mode. Page up is full lighting and also wave mode. Delete is pulsing. Page down is single reactive mode. And the end key allows you to customize what lights are on and off by pressing function and end again and choosing your keys. And to save it, just press function and the end key again. And on the top are some shortcuts and media keys, which are also nice. Opening up the keyboard takes a bit of work. First, there's a bunch of screws on top of the keyboard, but only the screws that line up with the screw bosses on the bottom need to be removed. Then you can start trying to lift the keyboard out of the case. To completely remove the keyboard out of the case, we have to detach the cable by taking out a few things. And here it is all apart. It really is actually a simple design. And like I thought, the flanges are just coming out from the side at the top, so we could actually just easily cut the flanges off and clean it up a bit, and we would end up with a super clean keyboard. Here's the PCB, which is attached to the aluminium backplate, and since it's aluminium, the keyboard isn't as heavy as the ones with steel backplates. We also have SMD LED lighting rather than the through-hole LEDs. The PCB is also a bit tacky, which I haven't really come across with other mechanical keyboards. But I think the super important factor is price. On their Amazon store, they list the brown switch version for $40 US and the blues for $50, so it's actually quite cheap for a mechanical keyboard. If you're on a tight budget and no matter what you can't go higher, then this is one to consider. I guess what it really comes down to is whether you like how it looks, and that would just make the decision really easy to make. And it's an interesting look, and I can see that they were going for that floating look, but I gotta say it did grow on me a bit, although I did have to leave the lights off. But I do appreciate innovation and just something different, and although it doesn't completely fit with what I like, others may fancy it. What I will do though is cut off the side bits to give it a cleaner look and make it what the Magic Force crystal should have been, but I won't do it in the video. You gotta respect the designers. I've had an Instagram account for ages, but I've never uploaded anything there because I'm lazy, so I'll put it up on there if anyone wants to check it out.